You're listening to the Inside the Numbers Rock Daisy Sports Performance Podcast with your host, Cody Hughes. And today I have on an awesome guest in Coach Ryan Phillis. Coach Phillis is currently the Director of Strength Conditioning for football at BYU. At the time of this taping, they are 5-0 and having an awesome start in the Big 12. And he's also the first coach I ever had the opportunity to work alongside as an intern. Back in 2016 at Mississippi State, he was on the full-time staff. And when I became an intern, I was assigned to his rack and to his tutelage of however I could help him out as an intern. And I got to learn under him immediately, saw how he navigated, saw how he connected, and learned a ton. And he's kept in touch with me ever since, which says a lot about his character. In this episode, we go into a lot of things, including about learning how he really believes about mental toughness and what it truly is and what fortitude really is and how it's connected with his head coach at BYU. He also talks about their force plate testing and using the dynamic strength index, including the isometric mid-thigh pull and the counter movement jump, to see if he can bucket his guys into more of needing more force or needing more velocity or more elastic qualities, and goes into some programming strategies with that, alongside his VBT philosophy and how he programs and adjusts loads on the fly and auto-regulates during the season. This is an awesome episode. I'm very grateful for Coach Phillis for taking time during the busy season of football season to come and talk to us. This episode is jam-packed. I hope you guys truly enjoy it, and I'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Inside the Numbers, the Rock Daisy Sports Performance Podcast with your host, Coach Cody Hughes. Join us to unlock the secrets behind athletic performance as we break down the metrics and transform your collected data into powerful, actionable insights. Tune in for exclusive interviews with top coaches and professionals who are revolutionizing their training programs with data. If you love what you hear, please share it on X, Instagram, and YouTube, and tag us at RockDaisyAMS. So at the time of us recording this, how does it feel to be 5-0, Coach?
It's awesome. It's honestly a huge blessing. It's, 13th in the Big 12 preseason polls. Our head ball coach is really adamant about not listening to the outside noise, right? That's with really any team, but that was kind of our emphasis this whole offseason is keep the chip on your shoulder. Don't listen to the outside noise. We know what type of team we have in-house, and honestly, don't let anybody know that. And so that's kind of the secret sauce of that whole deal. And last year was a wake-up call for us in a couple ways. But when I talked to Coach Kalani about everything, he's mentioned this before. It's like having your firstborn child, right?
Right.
You don't know what to expect. But when you have your second child and you're now in the second year of the Big 12, hey, I've kind of got some things under control. I know what to expect. I know what these teams look like, the physicality of these teams. And so I think last year prepped us fairly well, having a close couple games at the end of the year with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State where, it could have been one play and the script would have been flipped to 7-5 instead of 5-7.
Right.
Now this year, starting out 5-0, it's just a testament to our guys. We have a lot of guys in this building that, man, when I say this, I mean this. We have some of the best kids in college ball.
Yeah.
Just the culture and the standard that these kids live by every single day. Not only what we do here in the weight room, on the field, the standard that the head ball coach and I kind of set in place, but just the way they live their life, right? And the honor code and what they have to do outside of here, it's fallen into place how I expected and how this team expected it to. So I remember when we were at Mississippi State, and me and Coach Tanner were at Mississippi State, in 2016, we played, I think it's 2016, yeah. We played here,
Yeah.
Got into
That was literally the season right after I interned with you guys. That was literally the same season, so yeah.
Yeah. Got into overtime, and lost that ball game. The crowd was crazy. The fans are great. So, yeah, it's a blessing. It really is.
Yeah. I bet it's a lot, it's a lot of fun to coach when you got a lot of the group of guys and the staff in place where everybody's aligned and everybody aims for that, and I'm curious to hear your take because I actually had a discussion with a buddy of mine the other day about like the current temperature of college football due to NIL, transfer portal. But I want to know what it's like coaching with boots on the ground inside this environment, because, even back when for the listeners that don't know, I interned under Coach Phillis at Mississippi State back in 2016. That's how Coach Phillis and I know each other. That's where I got my feet wet. So like back, even just seeing you guys operate there with the traditional model to what it's like now. What are some major differences you've seen?
Well, in regards to now, this being my first head job and stop as a head strength coach, we dipped into the portal, obviously, when it opened up a couple years ago. I know that. Last year, we had a complete, 50-50 swap almost with portal guys. And then we have mission guys who come in after 2 years of a mission trip. We have then guys who didn't go on a mission, but they're here. It was like a quarter almost. Mission guys, transfer guys who have been here but didn't go on a mission. It was kind of odd, but when you see the transition from NIL and what these, now you're getting money for players.
Yeah.
You're dishing out money for players, and the landscape has definitely changed. Some of these players make more or just as much as the coaches, right? Depending on where you're at and what resources you have. In my instance, Coach Kalani doesn't recruit based on NIL. We're at an institution where, these kids come in, they preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. They are here for that and to play football and to go to school. We have resources here, absolutely, but he doesn't recruit for those reasons. Now, at other places, I don't know firsthand really how that looks. I could guess that the culture and the standard that we have here is stronger than a lot of places. I think that can get a little iffy when guys make a ton of money, they transfer mid-season, they don't play the rest of the season because they're going to redshirt and then transfer after and get more money somewhere else. I can see how that can have a huge effect on the locker room, on how things are kind of built within the facility. Culture-wise, we don't deal with a ton of that here. We really don't. But
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of pre-qualifies if you're coming to play at BYU. There's some pre-qualified things like, hey, you're choosing to come here already.
Correct.
So it kind of takes care of that up front. As far as this being your first head job, you've been all over the place, like just looking at your history, you've moved all over the country, doing this thing. And
my wife, she's about done with that though.
Hey man, I get it. But you made it through, and you've landed your first head job. What have you learned? What it truly means to sit in the head seat? Because as an assistant, you always have ideas. You always feel like, especially when you're young, you think, if only we could do. You can't help it when you're ambitious to think that way.
Correct.
But what about when you're actually sitting in that seat?
Yeah.
What have you learned?
It's completely different. You don't know until you sit in the seat, and that goes with there's inside stuff that that other people don't know, with whether it's injury related, whether it's management, whether it's the resources you're going to get here coming soon. Everything's on your plate. It's just how you not only resources, but the staff that you have to help you. You got to delegate some things. Okay. You really do. But
is that tough for you? Is that tough for you to learn how to do that in the beginning, or maybe it's not as tough?
It is, because that comes with trust, and thankfully I have a staff that I trust, that I've a couple of these guys I've been with for a while. But also, it's almost like you want to hoard it yourself at first, but then you're like, hey, you gotta delegate some things to get things done. You have to trust your staff. So at first, yes, because it's like you don't want anything jacked up. But in retrospect, like, you hired these guys, you need to trust these guys, and I do. And they have a ton of responsibility. And yes, it's definitely different. When I told my staff, and when I kind of talk about this outside of here, the script is kind of flipped now. It's all you're worried about as an assistant is what the head strength coach gives you and coaching the guys. That's it, right? Now it's like, now you're worried about budgeting. Now you're worried about the resources you're going to get. Now you're worried about, how is the room flowing? What's it look like? Are we missing something on the floor? And when you look back at it, it's like, dang, did I even coach anybody today?
Right.
And it frustrates me at times But so when I'm on the floor, I tell my guys, hey, I'm not trying to step on your feet, but I'm going to be in and out of the racks trying to coach everything I can because that's my job. That's what I love. Like, it's like nothing against anybody. Just don't get upset when I'm coaching one of your guys up, and
Sure,
because it's something I'm missing that void right now. But
there you go. Yeah. You gotta manage a lot more than be in the mud coaching. But that's like what we do. That's like
Correct.
what we love to do.
Correct.
That's what gets us fired up.
Correct.
I feel like I learned that a lot when I went to McNeese as my first like full-time job at FCS, working for Ben Souders, who's at Arkansas now. I watched him do that, and I noticed like I had this was like an observation from an assistant who was extremely young,
right?
Like not even a year out of undergrad with a full-time job, who thought he knew everything because I'm a knucklehead. But watching him maneuver, the way he maneuvered with like the culture of the guys in mind first, he kind of gave us like, look, like here's kind of my outline of the programming. Here's our priorities. I'm going to make sure our stamp's on that, but I'm making sure our team pulse is in the right place. I got to trust you guys to coach it.
Right.
But don't get upset if the standard's not where I want it, because I'm going to put it back. Because at the end of the day, it falls on me.
Correct. Yeah.
I didn't really understand that as a young coach,
Yeah. And that's, and you only know that until you have been through it, and then you sit at that head spot and you're like, oh crap. When you look back and you're like, I remember when this used to happen to me. So, yeah.
For sure. And I can see where there's a tough dynamic. You have to have a lot of skill and trust with your staff to know, like, all right, we're on the same team, right? There's a lot of respect here, but there's also, whether you want to say it or not, there still is a hierarchy. There still is a trump card to be played. Have you've been on a lot of staffs, man. You're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 full-time spots.
Yep.
I mean, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Not knocking anybody's names, like not talking ill on anything, but I'm sure you've seen a lot of different coaching dynamics.
Many.
Some good, some bad.
Some good, some bad. Some assistants didn't agree with what the head ball coach wants or the head strength coach wants. And then that gets iffy as well. I mean, there's definitely things that, go on, and it's unfortunate, but How do you handle those like if I'm an assistant and I see something I don't necessarily agree with, and maybe there's time you sit in the boardroom and you guys are laying out the plan for the off season or for in season. It's almost like, there can be like a toxicity of like somebody doesn't agree but will not speak up, doesn't want to communicate, but then wants to whine and complain on the back end. Like, that's not how this works. Correct.
If I'm an assistant wanting to like, hey, Coach Phyllis, I want to challenge this thought process. How would you like tell a young coach that's either going to want to bring an idea to their head strength coach, or if you're a head strength coach, how to do it to bring it to your head ball coach? Because that's a whole nother level. Yeah. How to approach that the right way.
The right way, honestly, is just being open about the situation. Instead of going behind the head strength coach's back and talking amongst other assistants of, oh, this is dumb, this is stupid, I don't know why we're doing this. Say, hey, coach, can I see it for a second? Right? Coach, why are we doing this? Do you have an explanation? Like, I'm just confused, right? As one of your assistants, I'm confused on why we're doing this. I want to know a little bit more about this. Can I make any suggestions? Are you open to that? That's the right way to do it, right? He either says yes or no, right? If he's willing to learn himself, he's going to say yes. Because at the same time, I am not set in my ways. Like, if I think that I have arrived, I'm wrong. So researching daily, reading daily, listening to my assistants. I only got one pair of eyes. I need everybody to see the floor, what's going on, make suggestions. I'll either say yes, obviously yes or no, but at the same time, that's the way to go about it. Say, hey, coach, do you have a couple minutes to talk? I kind of want to know a little bit more about this, why you're doing it this way. Just to be frank, I don't understand. I don't really agree with it, but can you help me? And if not, if he says, no, this is kind of what I've always done, you know how that kind of goes, then okay, well, then that's where it stops. You go back into your office and you're like, okay, this is how coach wants to do it. Let's move on. Let's get this done the best way we can. So there is no toxicity. Whether you agree or not, you got to move on and do your job.
Right.
And
for sure. That makes sense.
How it works. Yeah.
Make the head coach's job easier regardless of how you feel about it. It's being a good assistant. That's what I've always heard,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
matter what. Get your feelings out of it. One thing, so I know when I think I caught up with you 2 or 3 years ago at the CSCCA, you had just started, I think it was at Purdue is where you really started getting your feet wet with the 1080 sprint.
Correct. Yep.
So let's get into a little bit more X's and O's and where things have really taken off with, the technology race is crazy now. Like it's all over the place. How are you guys utilizing 1080 can be your main topic here, or you can pick one, but like how you're utilizing technology. Like obviously everybody and their mama has a force plate now, whether they know how to use it or not.
Yeah.
They've got them.
Yeah.
But I'm just so curious because I have tech too, but I can see how overwhelming it can get. Like where is the technology that you guys see? Like what piece of tech in y'all's program moves the needle?
Yeah. Honestly, we take a combination of all of it. We look at our program. We look at where these guys lie. So I run a kind of a bucket system type deal.
Okay.
I have a force bucket. I have a velocity bucket. I have a volume bucket for some young guys who need to gain mass. And now we're also dishing in a missionary bucket for guys who come off of a mission after 2 years.
Gotcha.
Where they can't go straight in. Honestly, I've seen this happen the past couple of years. They can't go straight into the volume bucket.
They get destroyed.
They even can't handle that because they only get 20 to 30 minutes in most places to work out a day for 2 years.
Yeah.
Some are more, some are less, depending on where you go. In their own separate program is going to be a ton of extensive plyos, not intensive plyos. It's going to be getting their aerobic capacity back through anaerobic work. It's going to be a ton of stuff in those regards to get the tissue back, get the tendons rolling. Just
straight capacity. Like we got to get you in shape to train.
We got to get you back to equilibrium, and that takes. I mean, heck, I'm not going to lie. That takes months. That takes months to get them even back to where we need them to be to toss them into a bucket. And so what I mean by this is we use all of our data. We DSI test the guys, dynamic strength index. We test them through the mid-thigh pull and the counter movement jump. We get that number and we dish them into either the ballistic velo bucket. We dish them into a force bucket, more of a strength bucket.
So is that need or what they're good at? So like force bucket means these are guys that are good at force or guys that need force?
They need force. Yeah, they need force. They need more strength. And then we program off of that. So how the 10s and stuff come into play, when our sprint work correlates with our weight room work and vice versa.
Right.
We use the 10s every single day, especially in sprint work. If we have a velocity guy, I'm going to have 2 days running light resistance, some sort of max velocity, 1 day heavy resistance, and the other day, the 4th day, COD angular.
Got it. Okay.
If it is a heavy resistance force guy, he needs force application through the ground. I'm going 2 heavy resistance days, 1 light resistance day, 1 COD angular day. So max velocity, rate of force development guy is going to have 2 light resistance days, 1 heavy, 1 COD angular. Now we're going to micro COD one of those days as well because we play football. It's a change of direction sport. So yes, we're going to have a pure COD angular day, but we're going to micro COD one of those days that they have that are separate from each other, either the heavy or the light day, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. Trying to just give the volume of what the guys need. And what does that look like logistically? Because I know, at your level, you've got a full staff. You can, where does that challenge logistically of implementing that in session when you've tried to bucket guys? I feel like the more you try to go deeper into individualization, the more sharp you've got to be logistically.
Correct.
Because it's easy to just run one program. Like at high schools, that's what you see. Here's on the board. Everybody's doing it.
Correct.
You can coach your face off. It's easy to coach that.
Right.
How are you guys handling that logistically?
Yeah, I have a 5-man staff. And so one of my strength coaches will be with the volume young guys. One of my strength coaches will be with the force guys. One guy with the velo guys. The other strength coach will help out with the biggest group. Say, 60% of our team is force deficient. He's going to go with that group.
Got it.
And help out if he's not doing some injury mod work on the side. Now thankfully, we have a full-time injury mod PT that goes around and mods guys on his own.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
That helps a ton. That frees up one of my guys to coach.
Right.
But that's how kind of I delegate that, and then I'll roll through and coach guys on the fly. On the field it's very similar. One strength coach is with the force guys, one's with the velo guys, the other guy is with the whoever needs help the most.
Sure. Gotcha. When you look at weight room programming, and I know that, any strength coach at the level you're at could probably talk programming for hours.
Yeah.
You've got force guys that need more force. You've got, your more springy guys, your velocity based. What about the programming is different?
The meat and potatoes we try to keep very similar. Okay, but have a little twist to it. So, for instance, during the winter, if I have, during the winter, my emphasis, not only muscle mass onto the guys, but we're in a strength phase. That doesn't change depending, no matter what group you're in. That doesn't change. Okay. The only thing that changes is, if I have a velo guy and, maybe we're popping some accommodating resistance onto him, some bands, some chains, accommodating resistance, I feel the need to at that point in time. We're still on a volume. We still want some volume on the guys. Maybe those guys are hitting 3x3 at 60 to 65%, where 63, 64% are where they reach peak power. 3-4 sets there, but then we add on 2 to 3 sets on the end for a little bit more of a hypertrophic effect, right?
Yeah.
Get some more volume on them because that's still our emphasis. So we're moving the bar fast. We're in the peak power range, but then at the end of the sets, we're getting some volume on the guys because still we need to gain some muscle mass and work that.
Okay, yeah. So instead of worried about, because I feel like you can get really narrowed on sets and reps with trying to get to certain volumes. Like you're like, oh, we're in a volume phase, like a very linear thought process. It's like, all right, we're going to do 4x8. It gives us 32 reps. But if you do a 3x3 to get that peak power stimulus and you're looking at 9 fast reps, you might throw 12 reps on the back end with like a 4x6 or a 4x3 or a 3x4 or a 2x8, just get some capacity work on the back end. Does it look something like that?
Yeah, correct. And also I'll take those bands or chains off, load them with some pure weight on there, higher the percentage or lower the percentage based on where we're at in our phase.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the force guys, the strength guys, say they're working between 80 and 90%, right? I will, if they're not using any accommodating resistance, say I'm using just pure weight, I want pure strength on them, pure weight on the outside, and they have 3 to 4 sets in between that 80 and 90 range, whereas the velo guys are in between that 60 and 70 range with some accommodating resistance. We do that. They say the same. They're still squatting, right? We're still getting that axial load on them, but there's just some twists and turns to it to get what they need to, but stay within what we're trying to get throughout the season, whether it's mass, strength, power, whatever the case may be.
Gotcha. Yep. So it sounds to me like you guys use VBT. You guys have Elite Form, I think is what you said. Yeah, so you guys are using a camera-based system. Talk to me how, because I feel like a lot of people when it comes to VBT, like I'm all in on VBT now, using it every day. But a lot of people have different strategies on finding loads, whether that be a combo of like percentage and velocity work. I'd love to hear like a couple of your very typical protocols using velocity, like something like, man, this is our bread and butter. Like we love this zone or we love this percentage combined with this velocity reading that's really shown some great results. What does that look like for you guys?
That's a good question. We dabble in a few things depending on where we're at in the year. Once again, say we are looking at, say we're in the middle of summer and my emphasis is peak power, straight peak power, but some guys produce peak power at different loads.
Sure thing. Mm-hmm.
So throughout the year, I have a velocity range I'm hitting. So I'll test guys peak power between 0.9, 1.0, 0.8, 0.9, 0.7, 0.8, 0.5, 0.6, whatever. I'm tracking that. Where are they producing the most peak power in that velo range? So when I get to summer, that's usually where it's at.
Got it.
And most guys are very similar in regards to, peak power can range anywhere from, 0.8, 0.9 up to 1.0, right? But they're going to need different weight on the bar. And so when I get to summer, I know exactly where to put them in between what velocity range that I'm hitting that peak power at, leading into season.
Okay.
That's one way we do it. Another way is just based on the time of year. For pure strength, say I'm in later winter and I'll have a velocity range of 0.4 to 0.5 or or 0.3 to 0.4, obviously
Yeah.
on our peak weeks, right? Depending on if you're benching or squatting, it's a little bit different. But that is, I'll either work velocity ranges like that, or I'll work them all the way through till summer, find where their peak power is to dish them into season.
Okay.
Once we get into season, a lot of things are auto-regulated.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, and I'll keep them between two velocity ranges. If they're bumping out of that velocity range, I'll either add weight or subtract weight, depending on if they're up or down, based on the external stimulus that they have in practice, in here, classes, whatever the case may be.
Does that bump? The auto regulation. I want to ask about that, and I want to come back to some other questions. Like when you're in and out of that velocity range, what is there like rules in place you have that like, okay, depending on where you're out of that velocity range, how much to add or how much to subtract? Is it different per group or, per coach? Does your coaches have a little autonomy, or is it like, hey, a standard? Now, like for example, here at the high school level, I make it standard across the board to allow kids to make decisions on their own, but in a very smart and conservative way. So like if we're wanting to be, let's say, doing some strength work,
right,
and our kids are between 0.60, that means we're good. But if our set average is above 6.0, they can add 5 pounds. So that's kind of where we're at. I didn't know, because like you guys are working with a much higher clientele.
Yeah.
It could be bigger than that. It could be,
Sorry, my light turned off because I haven't been moving around in the office.
You're good. No, it's fine. Sorry. You're fine. I can still see you just fine, but it's fine.
There we go.
Yeah, we're good. But like because I know that you may have some really strong guys who may need like a 20-pound bump if they're out of the velocity zone in order to get there. So I'm just curious, like your system with that, or if it's kind of how you guys work. Auto regulation.
It's definitely individualized to the athlete, and kind of knowing your athlete and where he's at and how far down under that threshold he actually is. If he's hitting a 0.4 and you're supposed to be between a 0.5 and 0.6.
Oh boy.
First of all, and a lot of our system is a red light, green light system.
Oh, okay.
So, say you got just a set of 3, you're 4x3. The first 2 reps are green, the third one's red. Go ahead and keep them there next set.
Got it. Like a redemption set. Like you got a chance to get all 3 greens.
Correct. Yeah. You hit a green, you hit 2 reds. Where is he at amongst those reds? And then bump him accordingly then.
Got it.
Yeah, if he's at 0.5 and we're supposed to hit a 0.6, we're going to drop 5 to 10 pounds, see where he's at. And it's the same concept usually. So
now within that has to drive some crazy competition.
Yeah.
Because like if you're a dude at a rack and you've got an expectation and you're having to take off weight, you can't tell me your guys aren't talking mad trash.
All the time. And when that gold screen pops up and you see that name flip across there, guys are like, hey, who was that? And you start looking around and chanting at each other. So it definitely does. But that is also, we use this as a conversation piece with the guys. If they're not within their velocity range and they're actually way below and they hit it the week before, I pull the guy in.
Yeah.
What's wrong? Am I missing something? Are you hydrating? Are you eating? Are you sleeping all right? That's a ton of my job as a director, is once again managing, looking at where we're at, being the temperature point on these guys and finding out whether or not I need to have a conversation, an extensive conversation with somebody so they don't get hurt.
Right. Even you might not have this issue at your level, because I know you guys have a really good culture, but sometimes and you may have it with your young guys.
Yeah.
It's like with my level, it may be why isn't your effort level higher?
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
You're sandbagging, dude.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
you might have to check them there sometimes first, instead of always being like, oh no, something's wrong. That ain't always the answer.
You're exactly right. And that's the thing. I'm hard on these guys in a good way. They know I care about them. They know I care about this university. They know I care about winning football games and their success on and off the field. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, right? Is you need to coach guys different ways. Do I need to stick my foot up your butt to get you moving? Or did you just fail 3 tests and your girlfriend break up with you?
Right.
And, or is there something going on outside of here? Like that's an extensive route for me to try to guide you and fix. Definitely my first thought is, what is your effort level? What's your intent with the barbell? Are you trying to move the barbell fast? Is your bar path wrong? what can I fix now? Then it's, no, coach, I'm pretty jacked up right now. I need to see somebody. Okay.
Right.
What are we doing now? So
let me ask you this question. So with having VBT,
Yep.
it can be a two-way street where it's, you obviously, we talk about all the positives, right? I mean, if I had to leave and go somewhere else, it'd be the first thing on my list. So, but what about the guys that are super analytical? You're smart guys that overthink things, that sometimes they like drive themselves in the ground if it's not like
yeah,
0.01 where they think.
Yeah.
Is that another conversational piece you often see?
it is. I usually drag them into the office after and put the force velocity curve on the board. And
There you go.
we're talking like, hey, force times velocity is power. The middle range right here is power. This is what we're looking for. Well, coach, I was at a point, whatever. Yeah, you had a good day. Good job. Let's bump some weight on you.
Okay.
And so
you allow them to see under the hood a little bit.
I do because in the beginning of the year, I address the team. I tell them exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. I tell them we're all, for the first couple of weeks, we're all going to be in the same GPP phase. We're going to get our tissue quality back, some muscle mass back up on us, and then we're going to DSI test you guys, split you out into buckets. This is why we're going to do it, is because you're force deficient, you're velocity deficient, or heck, you're concurrent. So we're going to mix a little bit of both, keep you
That's
there.
a really good problem to have right there. If you've got both, just keep going.
Our team, I'm telling you, our team was, when I first got in here, they were significantly velocity deficient. The previous strength coach, he had them extremely strong, right? Yeah. Producing a ton of force through the ground. So our emphasis was shifting them into more velocity based, getting them in that nice, sweet peak power range, getting better athletic ability out of these guys. And you could definitely see throughout our DSI testing going from, a ton of velocity deficient guys into concurrent now. So, which is a really good,
I'm going to go back a little bit. There's a question I forgot to ask. How in the summer you're looking for that peak power. So one question I've really just been trying to bang my head up against the wall is like, when you train in peak power, there to me is like, are we just displaying our current ability for peak power, or are we actually developing it? Because my mind goes two ways. Like, one, I know that if I want to get stronger, I need overload. Everybody knows that. Second, though, is if in order to display peak power, specificity comes into play too. Like, you need to know what that contraction speed feels like specifically. You can't just train heavy all the time and say, well, my max went up. This is the old school way of thinking, right? Max went up, this high, everything else below it comes up. Not always, not to an extent you may think it is if you don't train it specifically. So with you guys wanting those peak power numbers to go up, what is your thought process on developing that?
I think it goes back to looking at where they're at within velocity ranges, throughout the year. If a guy can produce peak power between, 0.8 and 0.9 at, say he's got 275 on the bar, now we're looking at, can you put 285 on the bar, stay within that range, and increase your peak power?
Got it.
I think it goes back to velocity ranges, and once again, using elite form. And looking at that data, but then applying it. So you move 275 at a 0.9, right? Can we move 285 higher than a 0.9? It's going to increase your peak power.
That's right.
So if that answers kind of the question, I would go back to velocity ranges and look where I'm at, see what peak power he's at, and then try to increase that weight, obviously, from there.
So if you saw a guy, like, for example, when you first came in and saw the team was very strength-oriented, if you ran the report, were you seeing guys produce their peak power at lower velocities? Like, they could not reach higher power numbers in higher speeds? Does that make sense? Like, their peak power number may be in, like, 0.7, but it's not a high number. It's just their best currently. But, man, they're really good in the 0.2s to 3s lifting heavy slow force.
Exactly.
Does that make sense? So, like, you might not see, because I notice with our kids too, like, if you look all the way down to like a 15-year-old, even training females, which is, is different. Like, asking a young kid to move an empty barbell to 0.9 meters per second is really difficult because they just don't have that engine. They can't do it. Right. But they can lift it slower for a lot longer volume. Same thing with females. So that's why I was curious with a young for looking at peak power numbers. But then if you get in that happy spot, like that 0.8, 0.9, we're like, oh, those numbers are popping, You're you're looking at 3,500,
Yeah.
watts, whatever, 4,000 watts. Now you're just trying to slowly, like progressively overload that section. Like, okay, we're in a good spot.
Right.
Like you said, 275. Now
Yep.
let's progressively overload and let's just see what you're made of. Let's see if we can get there.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
if they hit it, you're like, oh, adaptation.
Correct.
Okay.
And it also, and then look at other data that's with that. Look at your force plates and look at the quadrant report.
Okay.
Right. And see how many guys are shifting from that bottom left and scattering up into that top right, year to year. Or
So
even
when you say quadrant, are you talking like RSI mod or help me understand?
Correct.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just, the top right quadrant, they produce a lot of force and it's produced fast.
got it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Bottom left.
Not much force and slow.
Weak. Yeah. Slow, weak. So you see that quadrant report from year to year. If you have some guys in that bottom left, next year, you need to see that thing start to scatter up into the top right. So look at it in a 50,000 foot view too.
Yeah, for sure.
To see if what you're doing is benefiting the roster that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you start to see that starting to scatter up through, okay, we're on the right track. We've been doing the right things. Now, how can we make this better?
Right.
And so, and that sort of thing too.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you guys DSI test, so iso mid thigh pull, counter movement jump.
Yep.
Do you guys strap up on the iso mid thigh pull?
We do. Yeah.
Okay. That makes it pretty consistent.
Yeah, we don't want grip to be the limiting factor.
Okay.
So we strap up, make sure it's honestly when I talked to a rep at Hawken Dynamics, they actually said don't even go mid thigh, go a little bit above mid thigh.
Really?
Yeah, this was a couple years ago in Louisville, and they said go a little bit above mid thigh, kind of where you're in that high hip for like a clean per se.
Yeah.
Strap up so it's not the grip's not a limiting factor, and then obviously pull like hell for 5 seconds until you get the number. So
that I think that's a great point. I want to learn a little more about because I've done iso mid thigh pulls. I've got a rig for it. It makes it easy to adjust. But getting into the right positions because I want to. Do you want to go that high hang? Are you looking for the position that you think that is the most advantageous for high force numbers? Is that all that is?
I believe so.
Okay.
Honestly, I probably should have looked a little bit more into that part of it.
Sure. I mean,
it was in passing when they came through with the force plates at Louisville and they were setting it up and they're like, actually, you want to go a little bit above mid thigh, kind of almost into that high hip. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of moved on from there, but
sure thing. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. So that was good. I know you're a big proponent of. I mean, you can't play college football unless you're tough, and this toughness or mental toughness piece is constant conversation within coaches. Like it just is. It's real. People who want to completely dismiss it are on the far side of the spectrum. You're not right. People that want to think that it's everything and that programming doesn't matter, just being tough matters, they're wrong too. There's an art to this thing.
Yeah.
What do you think mental toughness truly is, and what does it all entail?
I think it's a combination of a couple things. What upsets me about this whole subject is people don't understand exactly what it is. And, there might be a better definition than I put it, but I put it in 2 words, discipline and grit.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've read the book by Angela Duckworth, Grit.
I have not.
She actually goes into research on, a grit scale and are you a gritty person? Are you not? And it basically entails that persistent practice and passion and purpose rather than talent and luck are better key factors for success, right? And I know that's kind of broad and it's kind of cliche, but once again, when you look at it and you look at the research through it, and especially what Angela Duckworth has done in that, you start to think to yourself, that is a component, right? You do have to do hard things throughout your program,
right? For
some mental fortitude, yes. Stupid things, no. And what I mean by that is, say you got a 320-pound lineman. You're doing prowler pushes that day, whatever the case may be. Say you're going 25 yards and back, okay, and you got everybody in the same group, and then you expect the DB to do the same thing. But he can't make it as far, and he's struggling, and he's throwing up at the end. And then you got coaches, you got people going around and say, oh, you're mentally weak.
You're soft.
You're soft. You're not
Yeah.
fit for this. I mean, come on. Like, us as strength conditioning professionals and degrees in what we do, and I mean, you would think it'd be common sense. It's not, right? It's like, coach, you got 275 on there, and you're doing 275 for a DB. Like,
It weighs 180.
First of all, what are you doing as a strength coach? Like, what are you doing? Second of all, mental fortitude, mental toughness is also task specific, right?
Yeah.
You flip the script. Say you have you're running a long distance run that some do. You're jogging them out for a couple miles, team run, whatever, and you got a 320-pound lineman in the back huffing and puffing after a half a mile, and you're saying, "Come on, you're mentally weak. Let's go.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Right. You're setting them up for failure, and then all of a sudden want to let them know they're not living up to a standard they weren't set up for in the first place.
Correct. So mental fortitude, mental toughness is also task specific. What I think of when I think of a quote unquote mentally tough person is what it boils down to day in and day out throughout your life. Are you doing what you need to do when you're supposed to do it? Right. Are you waking up on time? Are you eating a good breakfast? Are you going to class before time? Are you sitting in the front row and taking notes? Right? Motivation is different than discipline.
Right.
Motivation is this, right? And
it's
discipline can be like that, but discipline, if you have it long enough and you show some grit and persistence and passion of what you do, yes, it can go like this, but in the end, you're going to be in a better spot. It's going to actually go up.
Right.
Yeah. Going back to it, are you doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it?
Yeah. It's pretty simple.
It's as simple, right? I mean, it's written out there for you.
Right.
That along with grit.
Yeah.
I would say that is a mentally tough person. That dude's got mental fortitude.
So when you say task specific, I want to ask you, oftentimes if the person you're asking to perform something within this task, if the communication is lacking, it can be disguised as somebody being mentally inept or somebody because I feel like that could possibly be a problem even at practice. Like, think just watching practice of understanding assignment, and all of a sudden it's like a player didn't execute because of communication, or not necessarily like on a coach, or he's not paying attention in film. Like he didn't receive the communication. Not that the communication is not good enough, which us as coaches would take responsibility for that. Like, if my guys aren't learning, I'm not coaching. But do you see that sometimes where often you got put in a bad spot just because you weren't paying attention?
Yeah, you see that, and I think that's a double-edged sword, right? That goes back to the teacher,
right,
as well as the student, right? Yeah, you should have been paying attention, but maybe you have to let go of your ego a little bit and say, maybe I should have taught this a little bit better or changed something up. You got to kind of let go of that ego a little bit and say, what more can I do to get this guy to understand?
Yeah. That makes sense. Rather than just dismissing
Now, if he's just simply not paying attention, and that goes back to discipline, right? That goes back to, wake your butt up in film, look at the film, and do what you're supposed to do.
Sure thing.
So.
Yeah. Well, hey, Coach, I appreciate you coming on, man. This has been phenomenal. I need to catch up with you more. You guys are doing an awesome job. For those of you that don't know, like I said, I was actually the first rack I ever worked at was under Coach Phyllis's rack in Mississippi State. Like, learning how to coach, holding a clipboard. How can I help? And he did a tremendous job pouring into me. And I'm super thankful for how humble you've always been and just always willing. There's a lot of coaches out there that aren't that. And I just want to say I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's good to see, us being successful. Right. And seeing you being successful in what you do and as a coach. And I mean, heck, I've gotten programs off you before. Like, I've gotten, like, I can't do that stuff. I can't go on Excel and make the things that you make. Yeah. Right. And so that's where it's like, this relationship's going to grow, and you've done an awesome job yourself, and we need to keep in touch more. But I appreciate it, and it goes a long way. So
yeah, no doubt.
Both ends.
Well, appreciate you coming on the show, Coach, and we'll see you next time.
No problem. Appreciate it, Coach. We'll see you.